Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to episode 7 of our Heroes and Legends podcast. It has been a while since we've been able to just sit down and talk casually, relax a little bit, and that's what this is all about. So many times on this channel we do get caught up with information downloads, right? Like preview cards and financial information and Magic Gathering news. We don't have time to actually stop and think about the things we're talking about and give you my thoughts on them. So that's what this podcast is about. Now with Commander 2017, Ixalan, and then Iconic Masters, it's been a while since we've been able to do an episode, but I'm glad to be back at it because this is fun for me, and I think it does allow everyone listening to get a better idea of some of my thoughts on things, and I love hearing your thoughts in the comments below when we do these podcast videos. So typically we do 3 topics. That's what we're going to do today. Usually I like to do 2 Magic topics and then 1 topic outside of the realm of Magic. The first topic we're going to discuss today is Ixalan Limited. I got to play in a sealed event, I got to play in a draft event, so I'll give you my thoughts on how that went and just what cards I felt like performed, overperformed maybe, what cards were good against me, and we'll talk about all of that. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about Unstable and just your thoughts on it, my thoughts on it. Are people going to buy Unstable? Is this something that will sell? And that's what I wanted to discuss. And then finally, we'll go outside of the world of Magic and talk a little bit about the upcoming Super Nintendo Classic, which is the next big thing from Nintendo for the holiday. We talked about the SNES Classic a number of months ago, so I wanted to do a follow-up video talking about the Super Nintendo one, so we'll go into those details too. With that being said, though, quickly before we start our first topic, if you're looking for a way to support the channel and what we do here, just check out the description below. You'll find a few ways. Our Patreon page is linked there. You'll find product links on Amazon. If you go through those links and then buy anything, we'll get a small percentage back. And then also, finally, Flipside Gaming has given a promo code for our viewers. Really awesome of them. They're doing pre-orders now for Ixalan Iconic Masters. They have a whole bunch of stuff there, so check that out. And with that being said, let's get into it. Alright, let's talk about Ixalan Limited. Alright, I got to play in a sealed event of 5 rounds. I got to play in a draft event for 3 rounds. So my impressions that you're going to hear are just from those rounds. So not a whole lot of play experience yet, but I just want to talk about what I thought worked, what didn't work, just my overall impressions of the set in the limited format. Now, I'm going to start off by saying my overall impression. I actually had a lot of fun with it. I love Tribal, and this set isn't all about just Tribal. There's other little nuances in there which are important, especially if you're playing sealed, but even in draft I found could be very important for you. So we'll talk about some of those. I will say, let's talk about sealed first. Now, I opened my sealed packs and I found my pool to be a little lacking. I had one really big bomb, and I'll talk about that one in just a few moments, but I had a hard time at first thinking of my strategy with my pool. One of my first issues I saw was I got 2 Ashes of the Abhorrent, which is pretty abhorrent. So now one was foil, so that was like an extra card. So okay, that wasn't so bad. But when you see 2 of those in your card pool, that's a little demoralizing. So we started out there. And then I noticed that my black was pretty good and my blue was pretty good. And I had some good hybrid cards in those colors. But I didn't have tribal synergy, really. Like, I had vampires and pirates, but was that good enough? So I started looking outside of those colors to look at tribal synergies. So I thought, well, maybe I could go vampire heavy in Orzhov colors, black and white. And I could have, and I would have had better tribal synergies, and some of the cards got better when I did that. But then I was losing a lot of the good cards that I had in, say, blue in that case, and I felt like, well, I at least want to splash blue, but how consistent is that going to be? Because other than treasures, I didn't have any color fixing, but treasures were real good, and I think I would have been okay splashing now that I've had a chance to sit down and play with treasures and see how fast they work, and they did work fine in my sealed pool. So then I thought, well, okay, if I don't do that, can I go maybe more pirate-centric and try to go truly Grixis, or maybe even if I'm just splashing the black or splashing the red? And I looked at that, and again, I was in a weird spot where, yes, some of my cards got better, but then some got worse too, and my consistency got worse. So I ended up going with the Dimir, and it was a pirate vampire deck, and it was a tempo deck, more importantly. So that's what I learned. That was my first lesson. You know what? Tribal synergies are great if you open them, and I'm sure there's going to be those pools that do, but I think there's a lot of pools where you're going to have to kind of cut your losses and say, I can't really go 2/3 in on a certain tribe. Like, I'm going to have to go like half and half, and I'm going to have to find another way to win. And that's what I did. The tempo deck actually felt pretty good to me. Now, there's other things out there. Like, you could be in Azorius Flyers, for example, and play different types of creatures. Or you could even be in more aggressive builds that occur sometimes in Rakdos or even in Boros. So there's other options out there than just saying, stick to a tribe, stick to a tribe, stick to a tribe, right? So that worked for me. Now, my 3-2 record was okay, but I will say one of the games I lost to Vraska. One of the matches, both games I lost to Vraska, actually. So Vraska really beat me up, and I'll talk more about her in a few minutes. The other one was a close one. It could have gone either way. At one point, it was just kind of a board stall, and it just was whoever drew into stuff. So that one I felt like, okay, that could have gone either way, and Vraska wasn't winning. So the other three, though, were fine. A lot of dinosaur matchups, and I did actually very good against the dinosaur matchups with the tempo plays. That actually worked out really well for me. So I want to talk a little bit more about what was in my deck and what I came up across. One card that was great against me was this one, Settle the Wreckage. No surprise, probably. We talked about this in the set review. I mean, it's easy, first pick and draft, right? Great card. But yeah, this card, I thought to myself when I first saw it, well, you know what? It's a good card, but a lot of times I see myself playing this maybe more as an expensive Path to Exile, which is fine, I think. But my opponent blew me out with it. I mean, I was attacking with 4 creatures and they hit me with this. So I actually did still win that game because they were so far behind that I then drew into more creatures and was able to get enough last few points of damage across to win. So it was a little too late for them, and the extra land it gave me helped me play cards out faster too. So yeah, it didn't do it, but it just let me see the raw power of the card and its true potential. There's times where that will be backbreaking, you won't be able to come back from it. All right, Vraska, I mentioned her. She's good. So play her. If you get her, no matter what your other cards or colors look like, find a way to play her because she can win the game on her own. There's a card we'll look at in a few minutes, which was my big win condition that I even played that card and lost to her. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, she's just so good. 6 mana. And here's the thing. Treasures are awesome. She's more of a turn 5, sometimes even turn 4 play in certain decks. You get the treasures, you put her out, she can immediately protect herself. I mean, it's all the stuff we talked about in the set review, but I saw it in action, and wow, it is demoralizing. I sure did get ultimated, too, by the way. So, yeah, she can quickly ultimate. I mean, she comes out, quickly goes up to 8, puts another defender on the board while she's doing it. If you can't get damage across, like if you don't have a flyer or some way to deal with her quickly, it's game over. I mean, next turn she goes up to 10, next turn you're down to 1. That's it. So yeah, she's real good. Let's talk about some of the cards that I had that worked out for me. Now, River's Rebuke. This card is a beating. I loved it. And again, maybe not surprising. I mean, if you play this, you're probably winning. And this was what I was saying before. The only time I played it and lost was against Vraska. She got returned to my opponent's hand, came back down, just still, I couldn't deal with her. I just couldn't deal with her. I had no answers to deal with her. So it was what it was. But usually when you play this card, you win. Even if you have just a mild board presence and you're not super far behind, you're going to be able to make your opponent just tempo right out of that game and just keep attacking and stay ahead of them. Fantastic win condition. I would be happy to first pick this in a draft after playing with it in sealed. Had a great time with this card. Really, really good. This is another all-star in my deck. Argyl's Bloodfast was amazing. I did play the other side when I got desperate, backed into a corner a little bit. I think I did lose those games, but when I was just playing the front side of this card, as long as I got it early, it was awesome. Now, it's not going to save you if you get it late, and that's what happened. I was really low on life. I flipped it. I was trying to maybe sack a creature and gain some life, but it didn't really do much for me. Where it's great is you play this on turn 2. There was a couple games I played this on turn 2, didn't have a turn 3 play. I did this, drew an extra card, and just started getting that incremental advantage. And later on in the game, when I had extra mana, extra life, I just paid it, and great. And the thing was, I had a little lifelink in my deck, and we'll talk about one of the main cards in a few moments, but I didn't have a lot of lifelink. I didn't mind paying the life, sometimes going down to 14, 12, just to draw cards, and because yes, I made myself a little vulnerable life-wise, but those extra cards gave me advantage that I could defend myself. Those extra cards, making sure I hit land drops, putting out more creatures faster than my opponent, basically. Even though I was lower on life because of this, my opponent couldn't do anything about it because they were getting blown out by my card advantage. So that's what made this card amazing. And yes, this was a card I was super high on, of course, in the set review. And I'm still super high on it after playing it. Card was awesome for me. Like I said, it's not the magic bullet. If you're losing, it's not going to save you necessarily. But get this early or even mid-game, and it can make a big difference, especially considering the format felt a little slower. I did run into board stalls. This helped me in board stall situations get past them and just get what I needed to win. Can't say enough good things about this card. All right, here's some commons which I wanted to point out. The Skittering Heartstopper actually didn't have my sealed deck. I had a couple of those, though, for my draft deck. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Queen's Agent, though, I had in both decks. And for sealed, it was great for me. It was almost like a win condition sometimes. Because, first off, Explorer is amazing. I do want to say that. I loved Explorer. I was talking about how treasures help you stay consistent. Explorer also helps you stay consistent. And I will say, in my sealed pool especially, I went a little higher than I normally go mana curve wise. Like I had, I think, maybe 3 6 drops and something like 4 5 drops or something, which I typically would never do. But because I had treasure creation in the 2, 3, and 4 spot, I felt pretty good about it. Like I had a decent amount of treasure creation opportunities to just get there and get these things out, and that's exactly what I did, and it worked. I never felt like I was having issues with my curve. And yes, some of that will be luck. You don't want to draw a whole bunch of 5 drops in your opening hand. You'll, of course, have to mulligan then. But if you get everything to kind of flow right, and most of the time it did because my lower end of the curve was stacked enough that Queen's Agent at 6 was no issue in playing this thing as sometimes a 4/4 lifelinker, sometimes a 3/3 lifelinker, but I still got to explore no matter what. Was fantastic. So this card was a great common, really overperformed for me. The Skittering Heartstopper, I played this in my draft pool. It wasn't in my sealed pool. And I think main decked one of these and kept 2 in the sideboard, but found myself boarding it in a lot against like the dinosaur matchup, which seemed prevalent. I just seemed to run into a lot of dinosaur decks for whatever reason in both formats. But I went 2-1 in the draft, and again, I didn't have the big bomb in my deck. The way I actually planned on winning was with 3 Queen's Agents. So I had 2 in my sealed, I had 3 in my draft. So yeah, maybe I got a little high on Queen's Agent after playing it in sealed and then playing draft, but it was actually pretty good for me considering I couldn't open like the big bomb. Like I was still waiting the whole time for that like great card that's going to pull my deck together. It never came. So I ended up like in Golgari colors, playing sort of a mid-rangey deck, and it just really had no sort of consistency as far as tribes or anything like that. I mean, it was a vampire pirate tribe, I guess, or I'm sorry, vampire dinosaur tribe, I guess, and it was all right. I was lucky probably to go 2-1 with a deck like that. I got blown out in game 3, and we'll talk more about that in a second. The Skittering Heartstopper, though, great against dinosaur decks. So I was a little worried about having to always hold back the mana. But one thing I thought I learned too real quick that I didn't think of necessarily is there's so many like fight effects too. So dinosaurs come out and their ability to take out your creatures a lot of times are fight effects like pounce. So if you have that black mana, they can't really just pounce this thing out of the way because you're going to give it death touch and they're going to lose their creature. So it's really hard in some cases for them to get around this thing without losing some big dinosaurs, and this thing's only a 1-drop. And it wasn't that hard to keep the mana open, especially with the treasure chests and stuff. I felt pretty good about that. Skullduggery, awesome card. Okay, like, I played this in sealed. I unfortunately did not get these in draft, or I would be really happy to play them there. But I had 2 in sealed. I started out main decking 1, but I found myself boarding it in all the time. And again, not a surprise there. I think everyone kind of expected this card to perform well. And yes, it did perform well. Most of the time this was a 2-for-1. A lot of the time anyways, a 2-for-1. Just a really good card. All right, now, the main reason I was thinking about Dimir and sealed, I mentioned that I got a couple really strong cards in the 2 colors, and these are them. Deadeye Plunderers and Hostage Taker were all-stars. Deadeye Plunderers maybe a little less so, being at 5. Sometimes I had treasures when I played this, but I was really using my treasures to cast my 5 and 6 drops, so that didn't happen, I think, more than maybe one time. But one time it came in as a 5/5 for 5. That was nice. It usually came in as a 3/3. But I will tell you this, my opponents were terrified of this card because they didn't know what I was playing. I didn't really have anything higher than 6 in my deck, so they didn't know that though. And I think they were concerned about me using this as a mana sink to do who knows what. So this thing was a lightning rod for removal, which was fine by me. A lot of times I would actually kind of throw this out early to get it to catch a removal spell to play something I really wanted to play, like one of the Queen's Agents or something like that. So this card was great. Hostage Taker's amazing. I stole a Ripjaw Raptor with this and cast it. Yeah, that's going to be a good day when that happens, right? So, yeah, Hostage Taker, I can't say enough good things about this card. Again, not surprising. I think everyone kind of realized this going in, this was going to be a great card. But yeah, playing with it, it felt amazing for 4. You do want to try to play the card you steal quickly, because if this goes away, your opponent will get that card back. But if you can do it quickly, or as quickly as you can, you get huge advantage. Basically like in Control Magic, they had to pay a little more for, of course, but still, in sealed, it was amazing. And of course, Ripjaw Raptor, I mentioned. I played against this card. I sort of kind of played with it, but it was good in both cases. It was something that I was lucky in my matchups when I saw it. I was able to either steal it or destroy it quickly. If you can't, you're going to lose. I mean, 4/5 for 4 and that whole drawing a card thing, you're going to lose the card advantage. Fantastic card. Again, no surprise here. I think everyone knew this would be good, and this is going to see standard play, of course. But playing with it firsthand, it was great. Once I stole this, too, I was able to really take advantage of it. It was fantastic. All right, let's talk a little more about my draft now. I did mention somewhat what was going on there. But like I said, I ended up in this vampire dinosaur build in Golgari, and I don't know, the draft just didn't go the way it wanted it to go. The deck was serviceable. It wasn't horrible. It could squeak out wins, and I thought the deck was worse than when I actually sat down and played with it, because again, I felt like once you look at cards that I considered maybe not that great, they actually felt better in this format. It was a slower format, and the cards had a bigger impact. And again, I did run up against a lot of dinosaurs, and I felt like my build was good against dinosaurs, so that probably helped a little bit. But there was a deck that blew me out, and I played them in the last round, and it was a Merfolk deck, and it was the real deal. So when you sit down to draft, I mean, there's 4 tribes, but if you're that person that's lucky enough to be the only one that decides they want to be in that tribe for some reason, or at least maybe people are a couple seats away from you, you can have a real nice deck on your hands. My opponent truly did. Deep Root Waters was awesome for them. I saw that go around in the draft early, and I was kind of like, should I try that card? I don't know. First draft, I do want to try it at some point, but maybe not today. And it was pretty good. Now, it wasn't like the be-all, end-all win condition necessarily. I was able to board against it in other games and such, but at least game 1, it surprised me a little bit. Now, Shaper Apprentice, that card did work. My opponent had 3 of those on the battlefield at one time, so they had at least 3 in their deck, which is insane. And then also, you follow that up with Vine Shaper Mystic, and you have some of the unblockable Merfolk and stuff. Merfolk are no joke, and I think some people are overlooking them. I do feel like maybe folks are gravitating towards some of the more flashier tribes, like dinosaurs, perhaps pirates. But if you can get a hold of a great Merfolk deck, wow, it is back-breaking, and this deck was back-breaking. It was quick, it got its damage across, it just did its job efficiently. It's a little more cerebral, but wow, it really did work. So at some point I do want to draft this deck if I can. But it was a lot of fun to just see that deck work because it was that good. And it was one of those things after game 1, I'm like, I'm not winning this. Well, let's see what they do. And yeah, it did really, really well. And I lost. I didn't take any games from them. I lost 2-0 in that one. And rightfully so. Great draft deck. One thing I wanted to point out, one last card I wanted to mention, Cobbled Wings. I use this in draft. This actually, especially in my kind of awkward draft deck, was a win condition. A lot of times I just stuck this on a Queen's Agent or something and won that way. And I found that would happen against dinosaur decks especially. They didn't always have a lot of flyers or good ways to deal with flyers, and the Cobbled Wings stuck around. Granted, they could board against it, and I did have that happen in one matchup at least, but overall, card did some work and definitely can surprise your opponent game 1. And some of these big dinosaurs or these lifelink vampires that don't have great ways to get their damage across, this is a good way to help get their damage across and kind of narrow the board a little bit for them. So yeah, I had a good time with Cobbled Wings, actually. It was a very good card for me. Definitely overperformed. All right. With that being said, those are my thoughts on Ixalan, and we'll talk a little bit about Unstable next. But just to close out Ixalan, I had fun, and it was weird. It definitely felt different than a lot of the more recent sets, but I had a good time with it. Like I said, you might be a little caught up on power level, at least for draft purposes. It felt a little awkward, but the cards overperformed because of the slower nature of the format. So I was cool with it. I'm looking forward to playing more, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about Mark Rosewater's pet project, Unstable. A little quick history here. We've had 2 unsets in the past, Unglued, Unhinged. Mark Rosewater, of course, was the brain behind them. And they're interesting sets. They're a little polarizing. They're silver bordered. The cards are not legal in tournaments and such. And that is going to turn some people off because, well, why am I spending money on cards I can't play, right? Another thing is it's a humor set, and they're joke cards. So humor's subjective, and some people will find the cards funny, and some people will not find them funny. That's the nature of humor. So ultimately, these sets come in with a few things going against them. But my question today is, can that change with Unstable? Do people want this product? Will people buy this product? I think a lot of people will say they want the product, but the question is, will they buy the product? That's what I want to talk about today. And I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below about, are you planning on buying this? So here's my thought. Is this going to sell? I'm going to cut to the chase. I think it's going to sell. I think this is going to sell better than the previous versions of this set. I mean, okay, that might be a safe thing to say considering Magic's how many times bigger than those days. It's been a long time since Unhinged even. So, but I'll say percentage-wise that I think it will sell more than percentage-wise the other 2 sets sold. Here's why I believe that. And here's what you have to think about and be careful of. So first off, let's talk about the obvious. Full art lands, John Avon, they look amazing. So Unhinged had full art John Avon lands. This time he's back again, and they've gone full out, no borders on the sides here. Really awesome, and I love the decision. A little interesting to see how these come out when they're actually cut, because the reason you put borders on cards like that, like trading cards, is because if they get miscut a little bit, you don't notice it. You'll definitely notice this. I mean, I assume they're doing, I don't know how they're doing this. I would assume that maybe the print sheet's going to look a little different. Maybe it's a little bigger, so there are edges that would give on either side if it was cut a little off. I don't know how they're doing this, so hopefully they know. But they look sweet. Like, as long as they don't get miscut terribly or anything, like, these are going to be really amazing. I did notice they do have the hologram. Look curious about that. My assumption is we'd still get one of these in a pack, I would hope. But maybe because these are so cool, they thought, let's put the hologram on them because people might want to counterfeit them. But they do look incredible. So who's buying unsets, right? Who's going to buy Unstable? I do think there's going to be a higher amount of actual competitive players picking up packs of this just because of these lands. Think about Battle for Zendikar. We went a really long time without full art lands. They brought them back and people went insane. And I couldn't believe it. I was kind of scratching my head for a bit. I did videos, we talked about this. But I was saying people don't spend $60, $70 on a fat pack. It's not worth it just because you get a full art land pack. These things are going to be everywhere in a few weeks. And they were everywhere in a few weeks. But it kind of is what it is, I guess. I mean, it was a long time since we got full art lands. There was a drought. People were hungry for them. And they were going to pay more for them. And they did for a while. And now they're everywhere. And they kind of saturated the market again. But that happened with the first Zendikar. They were everywhere for a few years. And then they started to dry up. New players entered the game. They didn't have a chance to buy packs of Zendikar. They wanted them. So the prices went up in the secondary market. Foils were always, I think, a little bit special at least. But the regular versions became really not that exciting for a number of years. But then time went on. They became more exciting. And you could say the same thing even about the John Avon lands. Although they were pretty awesome at the time too. But a lot of players just weren't buying Unhinged because they didn't have anything to do with the cards other than the really cool lands, right? But that brings me to the second thing that has changed since those days. There are players that do actually have things they could do with these cards. Now, when I used to play Magic back in the day, back when Unglued came out, for example, we didn't have Commander, right? We didn't have Cube. Now, granted, these cards are not legal in Commander, but some play groups may actually say, yeah, you know what? we'll allow it. In our play group, we're going to allow certain cards because they don't interfere with the regular gameplay or what have you. Now, officially, if you play in a Commander tournament or something, you won't be able to use those, or if you play with people maybe you haven't met before. But for the most part, a play group wants to include some, they could include some. And that's not something we had in those days. In the old days, one of my favorite ways to play Magic was actually multiplayer. We used to call it Cutthroat. It wasn't Commander. We used to build regular Magic decks. We'd follow the rules for banned and restricted cards that were allowed at the time in like competitive play. But we played as a multiplayer experience. So what was nice about that is a lot of times, especially in those days, one-on-one games were really quick, right? Or it was really easy to get yourself in a mismatch unless you were playing a certain, like, competitive level deck. This allows you to experiment with less competitive decks, but still win sometimes. Because, like you see today in Commander, if a deck's really strong, it doesn't mean it wins. Sometimes it makes you a target. So you're able to experiment more and just do different fun things, and that's how I preferred to play Magic back in those days. Now, because we followed the regular rules for deck construction when Unglued came out, you couldn't put Unglued cards in your deck, and we didn't. So we didn't really have a reason to buy Unglued. I think I bought like 2 packs of it just to kind of see what it looked like, and I had a good laugh for a few minutes, a couple of cards, and then threw them in a box and never saw them again, right? Like, that's what was happening, I think, with the original set. They did have full art land in there, and they actually looked cool. Not as cool as the unhinged ones, I don't think, personally, but the unhinged ones came out a few years later, and yeah, they were really cool too. But I think the same thing. People didn't have things to really do with the cards other than the lands. Nowadays, some Commander groups, I think, will allow these, and I think Cube players would really enjoy these. So I do think Cube players could potentially want to pick these up to throw these type of cards in their cubes. You're seeing that more and more nowadays with Unglued, Unhinged cards showing up in cubes. And maybe it's one here, one there, something like that. But still, there are Cube players that might just want the option to have a number of these cards to throw in a cube if they want to. The other thing I'm interested in with this set is just to see how the humor's evolved, because so much has changed over the years. I mean, we didn't have Planeswalkers when Unhinged came out. So much has changed in Magic. I want to see how meta they get. I want to see how much they make fun of themselves. And I think it could be actually pretty entertaining, and I do want to see it for that reason. So here's my conclusion. I think this is going to sell. I think this is actually going to sell real well. And I think a lot of people may underestimate the sales. And that's a little scary, because if Wizards underestimates the sales, they might not print enough. If stores underestimate the sales, they may not order enough, which of course leads to not enough being printed. So I kind of wonder what's going to happen here. I hope anyway, that Wizards knows that the market's changed a lot, and I hope they take a little bit of a risk on this one and print enough. Because I think there's going to be a higher desire for this card, again, percentage-wise, than there was for the original 2 sets. And I guess we'll wait and see. We'll know in December what actually happens, but keep an eye on this one. I want to get a couple boxes just to open on the channel, but selfishly, I want to get these lands too, right? And I think there's a lot of players that, if I'm competitive, I might pick up some packs for some lands. If I'm casual and I like to play a casual cube, I'm going to pick these up. Or if I have a play group that lets me play them in Commander, I'm going to pick them up. So there's a lot more people that could be interested in these today in 2017 going into 2018 than there ever really has been percentage-wise in Magic. So I guess we'll wait and see. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts, if you agree, disagree, if you think this is going to sell, not sell. Are you going to buy it? That's what I'd really like to hear. So anyway, that leads us to our last topic. And it's not a Magic topic. Now let's talk a little bit about the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. So this is coming out for the holidays and into 2018. Now, we talked about the Nintendo Classic on a previous podcast. If you remember that episode, we discussed how Nintendo didn't make enough, kind of burned the consumers a little bit there, and a lot of them ended up in the hands of resellers. People were paying, or maybe not paying, hundreds of dollars for them when it was $59.99 retail. Really tough sell, right, to kind of make Nintendo look like the good guy there. I mean, they just really fell short, far short of the demand that really people were upset, and rightfully so. I mean, people that wanted this could not get it, could not find it, and unless they paid an exorbitant amount of money. Good news, if you're somebody that was looking for one of those and you never got one, Nintendo has said they are going to re-release it now. So good on them for trying to fix that problem. Hopefully they make enough. I guess we'll kind of wait and see what happens with that. But I think that is a really cool thing for them to do. So good on them for that. There's also the Super Nintendo Classic, of course, coming out. So there's a few differences between the two. This one's a little more expensive, $79.99 for this one. This, of course, is going to have 21 Super Nintendo games on it. One game that's never been released before, Star Fox 2. Now, the SNES Classic had 30 games, so it had more games. You only got one controller with that one, though. This time you're getting 2 controllers. That makes me feel a little bit better, because if I paid $59.99 for the Nintendo and bought a second controller, that's another $15, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it's getting close to the $79.99. But yes, granted, you are getting less games. There are some new features, though, on this one, like a rewind feature and such. So, there you go. Let's look at these games, because if you're somebody that played Super Nintendo in the 90s, it's probably your first question. What's on here? Well, you get Super Mario World, which is my personal favorite side-scrolling Mario game. A lot of people like Super Mario 3 on Nintendo more, but I like that game. I really did. It was a great game. But this one, for whatever reason, was really special to me. Maybe it's just nostalgia, that time that I played it or whatever. Super Mario Kart. This one maybe doesn't age as well, especially if you played any other incarnations of Mario Kart, even the Nintendo 64 one. But again, I liked this game, and I think if you can get past the graphics and such, I think you'll have a good time with it. Zelda, basically Zelda 3, A Link to the Past. The original is still my favorite, actually my favorite game of all time. But this game's awesome. This cartridge was awesome back in the day. Third installment, and really maybe the best installment when it comes to the actual 2D ones. But I will say this. Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for the first one. I really like the second one too. This one is at least my probably second favorite Zelda game. F-Zero, one of the original titles, racing game. Super Metroid, amazing inclusion in the Metroid series if you've never played it. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, great fighting game. Super Punch-Out, I never played. Be curious to hear if people enjoy it. I liked the Nintendo one, but never really played that one. Castlevania 4, which was great. Some people thought that was a step back from Castlevania 3 on Nintendo because that was such a big, robust game. This game is smaller, but the graphics are better and just has more just interesting visuals and stuff. I really like this one too. Donkey Kong Country, actually Rare made this game with Nintendo, so luckily they were able to work things out to get it on here. Mega Man X, I never played that one. I think I played all the original Mega Mans, but never played X. Kirby Superstar, never played that one. Final Fantasy 3, which is actually Final Fantasy 6. Believe it or not, I've never played that one. I played 4, which was 2 on the Super Nintendo. But I never played that one. A lot of people say that's the best one ever, and I do want to play it someday. Kirby's Dream Course, never played that one. Star Fox, I love Star Fox, the original one. Star Fox 2 isn't pictured here, but of course that's the game that was never released. And I don't know, the ROM has been out on that one, though. It was leaked out many years ago, and people kind of say Star Fox 2 isn't really that good. So, kind of is what it is. I've never played it, though. Yoshi's Island, I actually never played that either, but a very popular game. Another popular game never played, Super Mario RPG. Contra 3 I have played, not as good as the original Contra, but it's a good game. Secret of Mana, I actually enjoyed that. It's a good co-op game, good 2-player game. Earthbound, I haven't played that either, and that's another like cult classic, like really popular game. And Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I never played that version. I played the Nintendo one, but not that one. So overall, though, some really good inclusions here. Strong lineup. So I think it is worth it if you are able to get your hands on one. But I will say this too, like I kind of feel like there's some games that are missing, and I realize licensing is a big issue. Like SimCity, for example, was another game they worked on with Rare. Even Super Tennis, I love those 2 games. They were both games they worked with Rare on, so I'm sure they had to make considerations to Rare to even get Donkey Kong Country on here, so we're probably lucky we got that. ActRaiser, I think, was another Rare game that I really liked back in the day that, of course, isn't on here. Final Fantasy IV from Square Enix. I loved that game, which of course was, like I said, Final Fantasy II on Super Nintendo. But I'm sure, again, they're probably charging Nintendo some sort of licensing or whatever for this. And it's also important to point out, I think most of these games, if not all these games, you can currently find on Virtual Console for Wii or Wii U, other than the Star Fox 2 probably. And I think all the others are on there, though, which is why I'm sure they have the licensing to be able to do something like this. They probably already had some sort of deal set up with their Virtual Console. So overall, again, if you can find these cool, I just really hope they make enough. That's the whole point I'm trying to make here. Nintendo, make enough of these things so people can actually buy them. They don't get turned into the hands of resellers, and people end up spending way too much for these things. They're a really cool idea. They are a novelty, right? Like they're maybe more for casual people, like more hardcore gamers, that you can play ROMs, you can play these on your Wii or Wii U for the most part, right? Like, yeah, it's not something that you need to necessarily go out and buy to play these games, because there's no other options out there. But I think it's a really cool thing, a nice gift for somebody, in a way to maybe someone who's a little bit older and doesn't have their Super Nintendo or their Nintendo anymore. They can pick this up and share it with their kids and stuff like that. I think it's a really cool idea. So yeah, the product seems neat, and I just hope there's enough of them. That's kind of all I have to say about it. But let me know your thoughts definitely down below. With that being said, that's our podcast for today. And hey, it's good to get back into it. I enjoy doing this with you and just kind of talk a little bit off the cuff about some topics. And let me know your thoughts on anything we talked about today. Love to hear that. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.